Hey guys, my name is Anay Dave, and today we'll be looking at how you approach the puzzle section in Logical. So, as you all know, 75 questions, 35 questions are puzzles, 30 or 40 questions will be a traditional logic. Obviously, this breakup that is there depends on the mock or the test you're taking, or even the final exam for that matter. So, it's not a fixed thing, but puzzles are a big chunk of your LR section. That is for sure, and you have to get a couple of these sets right. Like a good aspirant should be aiming for a couple of these sets. And now, how should you approach this section? I had an approach where I would leave this section to the end. So my strategy for puzzles or for the entire CET exam used to be finish the easy questions first, finish all the single questions first, and towards the end, leave 30 minutes for puzzles. 30 or 40 minutes based on how difficult the mock or the exam is going. Shrikant, on the other hand, had a strategy where he used to finish puzzles first because he used to get his motivation from there. So each person has their own strategy, but what is the same through all our strategy is the approach that we have towards puzzles. So one of the things that we've realized that all six of us have realized through this is that we all have a similar criteria for selection of sets. When it comes to selecting sets, it becomes really important to have a particular framework to see that, okay, if this is being satisfied, I should, like, there are these conditions that you need to have in your head. And based on those conditions, you should decide which ones you're able to, which ones you're doing first. So a lot of these conditions we've discussed in our previous video and also in our course. We've discussed these conditions in huge depth in our course. And a couple of these would be basically how familiar you are with the set, or how many people are there in the circle, or things like that, or how many statements they've given. A very basic one would be how many statements they've given. So you can just, on the basis of this, you can have a better understanding of what the set looks like. So when you see the puzzle section, like I'll walk you through what I would look at when I see a puzzle section coming. So when I'll be solving a puzzle section. So this is me. I am taking the test and I see the puzzle section. So let's say 1 to 35 are puzzles. Now, what I first do is go from 1 to 35 and mark all the sets that are there. Like, just to broadly have an idea of how many sets are there, how many questions are there. So I know how many, like the first question of each, I would just mark that. So I know that, or I write it down on a piece of paper so that I know that, okay, these are the ones that, these are the number of sets that are there. So I should be leaving time for this. Now, out of these six sets that are there, let's say there are six sets, out of these six sets that are there, I will rank them in my head as soon as I can based on how difficult it is. Now, there are two ways of doing this. One is you dynamically decide which one you're solving, and the second is you statically decide. So, static would be basically going 1 to 6, like 1 to 6 sets, and writing down in your head in the start itself that, okay, six is the easiest, then four, then three, then two, or something like that, whatever the order is, just keeping that in mind. The second would be the dynamic method where you are at runtime, like at the moment you are deciding what you should be attempting next. Like let's say you finish the sixth set. So then you go through, then let's say you click on the first one. You're like, is this easy? If it's easy, I'll attempt it right now. If it's not, let me see the second one. Now the advantage of the first method is that you directly have a clear plan of following. The advantage of the second one is that you don't need to spend time to make a clear plan. You can just click on things, go ahead, and you have a general idea. I used to follow the dynamic one. I would just locate the easiest one that I felt was the best to start. Like, you have a general idea of how to go about it. Once you click on that, you just go for it and you attempt it. Now, I would recommend having around 3 to 4 minutes, like attempting it for 3 to 4 minutes before deciding whether you should leave it or not, before deciding that it's too late, that it's too difficult to solve within the amount of time to have a logical, have a good marks per minute score. So I would say 3 to 4 minutes you spend actually trying to solve with your full force. Like full force, you need to spend 3 to 4 minutes and decide, okay, I have reached this point, and then you assess how much more time would it take to solve the set. Can I solve it in the next 1 minute, or will it take me 10 more minutes to solve it, or 4 or 5 more minutes to solve it? And based on that, I decide whether I should go ahead or not. Now that is a really crucial thing. Like that decision point, like that factor after 3 to 4 minutes to decide whether I should go ahead with it or not. That becomes really important because you don't want to waste too much time in this. If you're like me, it is the last part of your exam, and if it's the last part of your exam, you really don't have extra time to cover up. If you're like Shrikant, it's the start of your exam, and in the start of your exam, you still have time to cover up, right? Now, two ways of looking at it. You decide what suits you, what drives you, what is best for you. We've always said this. It is your strategy. It is, you don't have to copy someone else. It is what suits your entire framework and how you want to go about it. So you need to decide what works for you. But in both cases, you need to make sure that there is a cutoff time that is there. That there's a cutoff time after which you won't be solving further. Because after a point, you can't keep solving the same puzzle. You have to switch to something else. But at the same time, you should not switch at a point where you're leaving it, half solved, and it's like just a couple more steps ahead and you'll get the answer. That's why you have to practice a lot and get that point where you're able to pick the right sets or leave the right sets at, leave the wrong sets at the right time. That is also a skill that is really important. So you have to pick the right set, or you have to leave the wrong set at the right time. And I repeat it so that it's properly emphasized. But these are the two main things that you really need to keep in mind. And yeah, if you're able to maintain this, you should be having a good grip on the paper, because what happens to many aspirants is that they are solving puzzles and they don't realize when the time runs out. Puzzles are very interesting to solve. They're also challenging. You need to do a lot of thinking and you need to keep drawing cases and everything. So you don't know where the time goes. So you need to keep an eye on the timer that, okay, this is how it's going. So when it comes to approaching this section, this part of the section, that is how I'll be doing it. I'll be picking the right set and keeping this timer and then going through the circle. Like, if I've reached from 1 to 6, I've gone through all the things, solved, let's say 2 puzzles. And there are 4 puzzles yet to be solved. And that I have, let's say, an hour to go. For some reason, I have an hour to go. The paper was extremely easy. I have an hour left. This is a very hypothetical, imaginary situation. But let's say I have an hour to go, and then I go back to the four sets that are not attempted. I'll pick the easiest out of those. So, this cycle has to keep going on. The cycle keeps continuing until you're satisfied with how much you've solved. So that is how I'd be approaching the puzzle section. And yeah, I think all of us would be agreeing on this way of how you go about in cycles, because this is the best way of doing it. And all of us have experienced the regret when you attempt a wrong set. Because if you attempted a wrong set, you aren't just wasting your time, you're also not attempting questions that you should have attempted. So you're losing out marks on the set that you picked wrong, and you are losing out prospective points or prospective marks that you could have gotten in a puzzle that you could have solved in a shorter amount of time with lesser efforts and everything, right? So that trade-off is really important. You need to keep that in mind. Apart from this, is this the time discipline? At the end of the day, it is just the time discipline in puzzles that is going to make a difference. And in puzzles, the approach really makes a difference. Like, there are these connections that you can find. If you see one word somewhere, then look for that word ahead, or one person, look for that person ahead. If you're able to do that, I think you can solve puzzles faster. But if supposing you're outside the paper and you're still practicing, every day you need to practice puzzles to make sure that is happening. So that is all that I have for the puzzle section. Please feel free to contact any one of us if you want to buy our course if you're interested in that. But all the best for your prep. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you and see you in the next one. Bye.